Police found 3-year-old Airy Lee being pushed on a swing by his mother at the time in La Plata. But today, a Charles County judge found Romekia Sims not criminally responsible in her son's death. Straight out live now to WUSA 9's Stephanie Ramirez, who is live in La Plata with more. Stephanie.
Yeah, Adam, it's hard to believe that together and responsive Romekia Sims today that we saw in court was the same person here last May, but police said when they found her, she was disheveled. Attorneys telling us she was hearing voices telling her to leave her child and more. The judge today essentially gave her an opportunity to keep getting better.
Children's laughter typically fills neighborhood playgrounds, yet at a Maryland park, police stumbled upon a chilling stillness. There, a mother kept pushing her toddler in a swing, an action she repeated relentlessly, even though her 3-year-old son, Airy, had died in her embrace. The swing creaked on for days after his passing. It's the kind of tragedy that rattles even the most experienced detectives. What series of events could lead a mother to such an unfathomable scene? Let's unravel this sorrowful journey. It started far from crime scenes and headlines. Romekia Sims was an ordinary face at a local basketball game until a glance across the court changed everything. Working security that night was James Lee. Small talk led to laughter, and laughter turned into late-night conversations. Both called Clinton, Maryland, home, a town of roughly 40,000 where gossip travels faster than traffic. Their relationship blossomed fast, as young love often does. As 2010 drew to a close, Romekia discovered she was expecting. Financially, it wasn't ideal. She still lived under her mother Romekia Sims's roof, and James shared a cramped apartment with a roommate. But hope doesn't check bank balances. They were excited to become parents, determined to figure it out together. Before diving deeper, please tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Because what happened to Airy could happen anywhere. This is the chilling reality of how motherhood, ambition, and unseen dangers collided in a tragedy that no one saw coming. Welcome to True Crime's venue, where we revisit cases that haunt communities long after the cameras leave. If you're new, hit subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss what's next. By August 2011, the family grew by one more heartbeat. Airy entered the world. Understanding who he was makes the story ahead all the more painful. Energetic and joyful, Airy radiated life. He adored playing with his older cousin. Whether it was soccer in the yard or video games indoors, he brought laughter everywhere. Life seemed briefly perfect. James secured a 2-bedroom apartment in La Plata, a small Maryland town where kids play outside until the streetlights flicker on. Finally, the family could live under the same roof. Airy, barely 2, turned the apartment into his little kingdom, racing through hallways with his cousin. Moments that felt ordinary back then now seem priceless. Yet reality has its sharp edges. By 2014, the couple's bond frayed. Arguments, tension, and those late-night talks that turned into fights instead of comfort. Eventually, love alone couldn't hold them together. Separation followed. Living arrangements after breakups rarely come easy. James returned to his old roommate's place. Romekia stayed in the rented apartment. She had nowhere else to go, and stability mattered for Airy. Credit to James, he didn't vanish. He contributed financially when possible, ensuring Airy had food, clothes, and toys. Meanwhile, Romekia balanced college and part-time work at a retail store. She aimed to finish her degree and teach one day, a dream fueled by determination. But ambition doesn't erase bills. Losing her job changed everything. Suddenly, rent and groceries became daily stressors. Even with James pitching in, the numbers just didn't add up. From here, darkness slowly seeped in, not the darkness of crime, but of mental illness. Voices whispered from nowhere. At first, Romekia brushed them aside, but paranoia settled in, gripping her thoughts until they felt like reality. She became convinced strangers were lurking outside her apartment, plotting harm. Calls for help became frequent. Terrified, she phoned her mother, convinced armed figures stood beyond the door. Romekia, heart pounding, rushed over, only to find empty hallways and Romekia trembling. No intruders, no threat, just fear itself. Determined to help, family members reviewed security footage. If Romekia saw danger, maybe cameras caught it too. But every video showed calm hallways and locked doors, a cruel confirmation that what haunted her wasn't real, yet felt utterly real to her. Imagine living with fear that relentless. Even routine sounds became warnings. One evening, Romekia pleaded with her stepfather to come over, sure that men were outside waiting to attack. Again, nothing. Yet her terror was as raw as if those figures had been real. Before going further, tap the like button, share your thoughts below, and subscribe with the bell on. You won't want to miss what's coming next on True Crime's Venue. By February 2015, her mental health worsened. A frantic phone call reached James while he worked. Romekia, panicking, claimed someone had broken into her apartment. James couldn't leave immediately, so he called Vanasha. Familiar wrote, "Same pounding heart." Inside, she found Romekia and Airy unharmed physically, but something was different. Recognition in Romekia's eyes took painfully long. The woman who raised her looked almost like a stranger. That moment convinced Vanasha this couldn't continue untreated. Straight to the hospital they went. Doctors conducted tests, listened, and finally attached a name to the torment: paranoid schizophrenia mixed with depression. Medicine offered hope, if taken consistently. Doctors urged daily use, warning of consequences if she skipped even a few doses. Vanasha made a decision: move Romekia and Airy back into her home. Family around them, she hoped, would mean safety. Meanwhile, little Airy remained blissfully unaware of his mother's struggles. To him, she was still mom, playmate, storyteller, and protector. But the unseen danger wasn't strangers in dark clothes. It was in her mind. Time passed, and Romekia tried to keep structure. But mental illness rarely follows rules. Hallucinations returned, and depression deepened. By May, something in Romekia broke further. It wasn't planned violence or malicious intent. It was illness, raw and untreated. The choice to visit the park with Airy on that tragic day wasn't part of a crime. It was an attempt at normalcy during a moment of collapse. Police arrived to a heartbreaking scene, a mother pushing her lifeless son on a swing, lost between reality and the illusion her mind spun. Days of swinging after death. The press would later call it bizarre, but to those who understood mental illness, it was horrifyingly tragic. Questions flooded in. Why didn't anyone see this coming? Why wasn't help faster? Community members who'd known Romekia as quiet and kind now struggled to reconcile that image with what happened. James, meanwhile, mourned quietly. Whatever their past, Airy was still his son, a little boy whose laughter had once filled living rooms. This tragedy exposed the cruel gaps in mental health systems, how even with family intervention and medical treatment, someone can still fall through. Social services, overwhelmed and underfunded, couldn't prevent what happened, and a town of 40,000 was left haunted by what-ifs. True crime isn't always about evil intentions. Sometimes it's about invisible battles that end in public heartbreak. Airy's name joined headlines nationwide, and people far beyond Maryland mourned the little boy who never had a chance to grow up. Yet beyond the headlines and hashtags lies a family forever changed. Vanasha, who did everything she could, now left to grapple with guilt that wasn't hers to carry. James, robbed of watching his son grow. And Romekia, trapped in a mind that betrayed her at the worst possible time. Even today, playgrounds in that Maryland park hold a shadow, a reminder that tragedy doesn't always arrive as a stranger with a weapon. Sometimes it lives quietly behind familiar faces until it breaks through. Unemployment weighed heavily on Romekia Sims, but medication costs piled on until she felt completely buried. Beyond bills, there was an even bigger concern. Someone had to make sure she actually took her medication daily. Her mother, Romekia Sims, tried to help the only way she could, by keeping them close. At that time, home was the deluxe, a roadside motel in La Plata. Hardly a place for a young child to thrive, but at least it offered a roof overhead. Tension behind those thin motel walls became hard to ignore. Residents overheard heated shouting matches between mother and daughter, and, worse still, witnessed Romekia mistreating Airy. Police reports confirmed multiple incidents of violence, sometimes between Romekia and her mother, other times involving her little boy. Even prescribed medication couldn't dissolve the deep-rooted stress building between them. A cramped motel room shared by two adults battling mental health strain, plus the unpredictable energy of a 3-year-old, created an explosive environment. That explosion came to a head in February. Another argument spiraled out of control, and Romekia decided to leave. Gathering what little they owned, she took Airy and ordered a taxi. As Vontasha watched them go, she likely wondered if this would be the last time she'd see her grandson alive. James Lee, Airy's father, learned what had happened not from Romekia, but through Vontasha's worried call. Romekia hadn't told him about the fight or her plan to leave. Hours passed without a sign of mother and son. Growing worried, James got in his car and retraced the likely route the taxi would have taken to reach his place. What he discovered that cold night still haunts him. While riding in the cab, Romekia had slipped back into hallucinations. Convinced someone was chasing them, her terrified brain saw one escape route. She opened the taxi door while it was still moving and leaped out, clutching Airy. James found them walking barefoot along a dark highway, shivering in near-freezing temperatures. The little boy wore only thin pajamas, his small body trembling uncontrollably. A hospital visit confirmed what James feared. Romekia had stopped taking her medication. That single decision nearly cost Airy his life. The experience shifted James's perspective completely. Romekia was no longer struggling mentally. She posed a direct danger to their son. March 2015 brought legal action. James filed for full custody, explaining in court documents that Romekia's untreated mental illness rendered her unfit to care for Airy safely. The judge's decision crushed him. Both parents were deemed fit, and shared custody would remain. Airy would split weeks between homes. James walked out of the courtroom feeling he had failed to protect his son. Within days, tragedy closed in. Romekia quit her medication again. This time, she justified it by telling herself the pills weren't working anyway. Vontasha didn't realize her daughter had stopped treatment until it was too late. The voices returned, louder and more commanding than ever. May 20th, 2015 started like any other day. Romekia heard the voices first thing that morning. By mid-morning, she announced her plan. Airy had a mild cold, so she'd pick up medicine, grab fast food, and take him to the park. Seemed like an ordinary day, just a mother and son. Vontasha watched them leave the motel. Airy, likely excited at the mention of swings and slides, couldn't know what lay ahead. Around 11:15 a.m., they arrived at the playground. Romekia placed Airy into one of the toddler swings with safety chains and began gently pushing him back and forth. Time moved forward, shadows shifted across playground equipment, and families came and went. But Romekia never stopped pushing. The voices demanded she keep Airy swinging until someone else came to remove him. If she stopped herself, something terrible would happen, or so they warned. Evening approached. Temperatures dipped. Vontasha grew uneasy when they didn't return. Phone calls to her daughter's cell finally connected. Romekia sounded oddly calm, promising they'd be home soon. But they never showed up. Darkness settled in. Maryland nights in late May can drop below comfortable levels, especially for a child in light clothing. Yet Romekia kept following the voice's instructions. The next morning brought growing panic. It was James's scheduled week with Airy, yet Romekia hadn't answered his calls. When he reached out to Vontasha, she explained they'd gone out the previous morning and hadn't come back. James tried Romekia's phone again and again, straight to voicemail each time. What had happened to his son? Meanwhile, at the playground, the unimaginable was still unfolding. Airy had long since stopped shifting or talking. His small body, once so full of restless energy, hung limp on the swing as his mother kept pushing. In her mind, this was saving him. May 22nd marked the second full day. A local man who regularly walked through the park noticed the strange sight, the same woman pushing the same child at nearly the same hour. By now, he realized the boy hadn't moved in a worryingly long time. Temperatures had dropped below 50 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. Children usually squirm or ask to play elsewhere, but this child sat perfectly still. Concern gave way to alarm, and he finally dialed 911. Responding officers arrived to see precisely what the caller described, a mother methodically pushing her son on a swing. As they approached, the surreal horror became clear. Airy wasn't simply asleep. His lifeless face had taken on the cold gray of hypothermia and dehydration. Trying to speak with Romekia revealed something chilling. She calmly explained she couldn't take Airy off the swing herself. Voices had told her terrible consequences would follow. She kept pushing because that was the only way to keep him safe, at least in her fractured mind. James received the call that no parent should ever hear. His son was gone. The fight for custody, all his efforts to protect Airy, had ended in tragedy. Vontasha's grief mirrored his own. The little boy who brought laughter to family gatherings and kicked soccer balls with cousins was now another name in a police report. An autopsy confirmed what the officers suspected. Dehydration and hypothermia had killed Airy. His body couldn't survive sitting exposed for so long. Romekia, meanwhile, was hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation. Her untreated schizophrenia had turned her into both mother and unwilling instrument of harm. News reports quickly picked up the story. The public struggled to comprehend how a mother could push her dead child for 2 full days. Some blamed her entirely, ignoring the role untreated mental illness played. Others saw the tragedy as evidence of broken mental health systems that left Romekia and Airy without the help they needed. What's left now is a family shattered by loss. James carries the weight of what-ifs. Vontasha lives with memories of her daughter's slow unraveling, and Airy's name echoes through true crime communities, a symbol of a life cut heartbreakingly short, not by malice, but by an illness no one fully controlled. The tragedy exposed painful truths. Even love and watchfulness sometimes aren't enough. A mother battling unseen voices, a system unable to respond in time, and a child who never got the chance to grow beyond 3 years old. Public fascination with the case stemmed from its tragic and unsettling nature. Headlines across the country echoed the same sentiment, a heartbreaking loss that defied explanation. Family and close friends gathered for Airy Lee's funeral, still struggling to grasp how quickly joy turned to devastation. For James Lee, his mind kept circling back to the custody battle. Had the judge granted him full custody, he believed his son might still be alive today. That haunting possibility would shadow him for the rest of his life. The little boy who had once brought so much laughter was gone forever. The investigation that followed unfolded without complexity. There were no hidden secrets to reveal, no elaborate scheme or criminal network behind Airy Lee's death. From the start, Romekia Sims never denied what had happened. When police arrived at the park, she was right there, still locked in the same obsessive routine commanded by voices only she could hear. Detectives spoke to the park visitor who had alerted authorities. His statement helped piece together a timeline. He had seen the same woman with the same child in the same spot across multiple days, which had struck him as increasingly odd. Nearby business surveillance footage confirmed parts of his story, capturing Romekia's arrival at the playground on May 20th and revealing she never left with her son. The forensic evidence built a clear, heartbreaking narrative. There were no signs of bruising or physical assault on Airy's small body. The autopsy concluded that he died from dehydration and hypothermia after hours of exposure to chilly weather. With no real mystery remaining, The police investigation ended quickly. This wasn't a crime driven by hate or intent. It was a tragedy rooted in severe, untreated mental illness. While Romekia stayed under psychiatric care, the legal process began in February 2016. Courtroom drama was largely absent. From the outset, she admitted guilt to involuntary manslaughter. Her defense team's focus shifted away from denying responsibility and instead toward proving she hadn't been capable of understanding her actions. Mental health specialists took the stand, sharing extensive evaluations of Romekia's condition. Their expert testimony painted a devastating picture. The auditory hallucinations weren't metaphorical. They were real, overwhelming commands. Romekia wasn't ignoring reality. Her mind had redefined it entirely. In the judge's final ruling, he acknowledged her profound psychiatric illness. Instead of prison, Romekia received a conditional release. Mandatory mental health treatment, strict monitoring to ensure medication compliance, and a prohibition on being around children without adult supervision. For many following the story, the case of Romekia Sims and Airy Lee became more than another tragic headline. It exposed glaring flaws in how society responds to severe mental illness, especially when young children's safety hangs in the balance. James had gone through official channels documenting his ex-partner's deteriorating mental state and asking the court for full custody. Yet, even armed with evidence, the system decided on shared custody, a decision that ultimately ended Gary's life. This tragedy forced the public to ask hard questions that remain unresolved. How many warning signs should it take for intervention to become mandatory? Where should the line be drawn when a parent's mental illness endangers a child? Airy's life could have been saved if just one choice along the way had been different. For James, that what if lingers painfully. His battle to protect his son through the courts fell short, and that reality is something he carries daily. For Romekia Sims, grief arrived in two crushing waves. First, losing her grandson, and second, witnessing her daughter's mind become an instrument of tragedy. Despite her efforts, finding them housing, driving them to appointments, and monitoring medication, she still couldn't stop the disaster that unfolded. That powerlessness deepens the heartbreak. In quiet moments, Romekia reportedly visits Gary's grave. She brings small toys, sings to him softly, and tries to maintain a bond with the son her illness took from her. Whether she fully comprehends what happened remains uncertain. Perhaps her condition spares her from understanding the depth of the loss. That same illness which led to Airy's death may also shield her from the full weight of guilt. For everyone who loved Gary, the sound of a child playing on a swing carries a different meaning now, a painful reminder of a vibrant life cut short. The story of Airy Lee still resonates within true crime circles because it challenges the simplistic idea of evil driving tragedy. Instead, it shows how untreated mental illness can quietly dismantle entire families. The broader takeaway remains unsettling yet necessary. Danger doesn't always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes it wears a familiar face, someone battling unseen demons whose intentions are overpowered by a mind in crisis. It's a truth that makes this case impossible to forget. Stay vigilant, protect those around you, and seek help if you or someone close shows signs of mental distress. Like, share, and subscribe to True Crime Venue for more stories that do more than shock. They remind us of the hidden dangers we often overlook. Tap the notification bell so you won't miss the next story that could change how you see the world. Do check our playlist linked in the description. Thanks for watching.